Good morning, friends. In the last class, we studied about what is innovation, what is diffusion, and what is adoption. Now, let us see what is adoption of an innovation in detail. How the individual passes through several stages while adopting the innovations. Adoption of innovation. Adoption is a decision to make full use of innovation as best course of time. Adoption is a decision. It is a decision made by the farmer to adopt the full well, to adopt the innovation at appropriate time. So adoption is a decision to make full use of full use of an innovation as the best course of action available. So according to Rogers and Showmakers defined adoption process. They considered adoption process because it involves series of stages. Adoption process is a mental process through which an individual process from hearing about an innovation to final adoption of innovation. Adoption process is the mental process. Most of the time, the adoption process takes place in the mental minds of the farmers. That means thinking, knowing, and thinking about the innovation. Adoption process is the mental process through which an individual passes from hearing of an innovation, hearing about an innovation. That is knowing. The individual passes starting from knowing about an innovation to final adoption of innovation. So in between hearing about an innovation to final adoption of innovation, so there are several stages. The individual passes or the individual farmer passes several stages. So adoption behavior of an individual farmer has been conceptualized. Adoption behavior of an individual behavior of the adoption behavior of the individual farmer has been conceptualized by the researcher as adoption behavior, because it involves series of stages. Adoption behavior of an individual farmer has been conceptualized by the researcher as adoption process composed of number of successive stages. This adoption process composed of number of successive stages. According to North Central Rural Sociology Subcommittee, according to North Central Rural Sociology Subcommittee, this adoption process consists of 5 stages. Awareness stage, individual stage, awareness stage, interest stage, evaluation stage, trial stage, and adoption stage. So let us see one by one these stages. What happens in the individual during each of these stages? Awareness stage. First stage is awareness. Adoption process hmm, consists of 5 stages. So first stage is awareness stage. So at this stage, according to North Central Sociology Subcommittee, awareness stage, at this stage an individual becomes aware, just he become the aware of an new idea. At this stage individual becomes aware of new ideas, that is existence of new idea, that is development of new ideas such as new hybrid maize, new sugarcane variety, or new pesticide or new fertilizers. So these are the new ideas, new hybrid maize, new pesticide, or new any chemical, any new idea. At this stage, the individual become aware of new idea. He knows about the existence of the new ideas. That is development of the new ideas. He knows only about the development of the new ideas, existence of new ideas, but he lacks the details about it. That means how much it is giving yield compared to existing variety, whether it is resistant to disease or pest, whether it is resistant to drought or not, whether it has good market demand or not. So he lacks details about it. For instance, he may know only the name and may not know what it will do or how it will work in the farmer's field. Hmm. Further, the second stage, first stage is awareness stage. At this stage, just the individual become aware about the existence of new ideas or development of new ideas. Then second stage is interest stage. Interest, that means individual develops interest in new idea. Individual develop interest to know more and more and more about the new ideas. After knowing, he develops some interest to know more and what are the special features, special characteristics of new idea in comparison with existing ideas. The individual develops interest in new ideas and seeks additional information about it. He tries to develops interest to know more and more about the ideas and seeks additional information about the. So at this stage, the person wants to know more information, more and more about the new idea or products. So he wants to know what it is. So what is that variety? How it works? So how it works? What is new in that variety? That means whether it is resistant to disease, resistant to pest, resistant to drought, whether it is giving more yield, whether it saves labor. So he wants to know what it is, how it works, and what are its potentialities. He may also say to himself, this might help him to increase the income or help him to control the insect pests or disease or to improve farming or home conditions in some or the other. So in what way it is going to help the farmers? That he wants to know. That is interest stage. Awareness stage, interest stage. Then evaluation stage. After knowing more and more about new ideas, then make the farmers make the mental evaluation about the new ideas. At this stage, the individual makes mental trial or mental evaluation of new idea or practice. He applies the information obtained in the previous stage, that is interest stage, to his own situation. He applies the information about new ideas to his own situation. Compare the new ideas with exist what he is practicing and anticipate the future situation. So whether to what extent it is going to increase the, to what extent it is going to save the labor, to what extent it is going to give more yield, to what extent it is resistant to drought, resistant to pest. So everything. So he asks himself, can I do it? Whether I have to adopt it. If I do it, if I adopt it, what will it be better than what I am doing now? If I adopt it, whether it is going to increase the yield, whether it is going to save the labor, whether it is going to give the good market. So will it increase my yield or income or otherwise brings satisfaction? Sometimes they may bring satisfaction by saving the labor, by giving them good market, the good demand in the market. That is called as evaluation stage. Mental evaluation. The farmers makes after knowing more about the innovation of new idea, the farmers make mental evaluation. Then after making mental evaluation, the individual go for trial stage, making the trial, small scale trial. It means small scale adoption of the innovation. The individual actually, that is the farmers actually applies the new idea on small scale innovation situation in order to determine its utility. So that means you go for small scale adoption. That is called as trial. You go for trial. If he decides that the idea has been possibilities for him, he will try it. So after deciding the idea is suitable to his situation, he will go for trial. After making mental evaluation, at the mental evaluation, he decides whether it is suitable to or not. So the trial stage is characterized by small scale adoption of innovation or small scale experimental use of innovation. Then last stage, after he is satisfied with the innovation at the trial stage, then the individual go for adoption stage. That is, individual actually uses the new idea continuously on full scale. At this stage, individual adopt the innovation on full scale. At the trial scale, we try the innovation in the only in small scale, half acre, 1 acre. Then in the adoption stage, if you satisfied with the innovation at the trial stage, then you go for the individual uses the new idea, individual adopt the new ideas continuously on full scale. So this is final stage in the adoption process characterized by large scale continued use of ideas. So the adoption stage is characterized by large scale adoption of ideas and continuously adopt the new ideas and most of all by satisfaction with the idea. If we satisfied even after the adoption of innovation on large scale, if he is satisfied, he will continue. If he is not satisfied even after the full scale adoption, he may discontinue. Then this is about adoption process according to North Central Rural Sociology. Then one more model given by Rogers and Showmakers. Let us see that one. So that is called as the another model that is called as innovation decision process. All the individuals do not end up with adoption. All the innovations do not end up with adoption. Sometimes they may reject. In the initial stage, after knowing the innovation, knowing the new idea, they may reject. Some people go for trial, then they may reject. Some people adopt the innovation, then they discontinue. So all the innovations do not end up with adoption. Rejection may be possibility. There are chances of rejection, though it may be promising. Even later adoption or later rejection, even after the adoption, they may discontinue. Even they may reject the innovation in the beginning, they may later adopt. That is called as even later adoption or later rejection may take place. Considering this aspect, Rogers and Showmakers have conceptualized the term. Rogers and Showmakers, they are known for they are good. They conducted good number of studies on diffusion of innovation. Rogers and Showmakers have used the term innovation decision process in reference to adoption process. Rogers and Showmakers have used the term innovation decision process in reference to adoption process. So they considered adoption process as innovation decision because the individual make the decisions about the innovation, whether to adopt the innovation or reject the innovation. So that is why they have considered this adoption process as innovation decision process and have conceptualized five stage five stages of innovation decision process, and they have conceptualized that this innovation decision process consists of five stages. So what is this innovation decision process? Innovation decision process is the process innovation decision process is the process Innovation decision process is the process through which an individual process from first gaining initial knowledge about an innovation, the individual process. Innovation decision process is the process through which an individual process from first stage, that is from first gaining initial knowledge about an innovation, first knowing about the innovation, then after knowing he forms some favorable attitude towards forming an attitude towards the innovation. Then make the decision to adopt developing some forming some attitudes, make a decision making a decision to adopt or reject. After making decision to adopt or reject, implementation of the innovation. After deciding the adoption, then we go for implementation. Then lastly, confirmation of the innovation, whether to continue or reject the innovation. So innovation decision process is the process through which an individual passes from gaining of initial knowledge about an innovation, knowing of an innovation, to forming an attitude towards innovation, then to make decision to adopt in or reject innovation, then to implementation of new ideas, then confirmation of the decision, this decision. So these are the, according to these Rogers and Shoemakers, innovation decision process conceptualized Rogers and Shoemaker consists of following 5 stages. First one is knowledge stage, persuasion stage, decision making stage, implementation stage, confirmation stage. According to Rogers and Shoemakers, innovation decision process consists of these 5 stages. So let us see one by one. First one is knowledge stage. So at this stage, the individual knows. Knowledge occurs when an individual exposed to innovation's existence. That means at this stage, the individual came to know about the existence of new ideas and also understand about something about the new ideas and gains some understanding of new idea, how it functions. At this stage. In the earlier stage, individual just become aware. Here, the individual at the knowledge stage, the individual came to know about the existence of new ideas as well as details about the existence of new ideas. Details about the new ideas, in what way it is superior, in what way it is better than the existing idea. That is called as knowledge stage. At this stage, the individual not only came to know about the new ideas, but also knows more and more about the new idea. That is called as knowledge stage. Then persuasion stage. Persuasion occurs when individual forms, and that means at this stage, the individual forms, after knowing more and more about the innovation, the individual develops some favorable or unfavorable attitude towards innovation. So at this stage, the individual farmer involved more psychologically about the innovation. Persuasion occurs when the individual forms favorable or unfavorable attitude towards innovation at this stage. So persuasion function is mainly related to feeling, and the individual develops some feelings. At this stage, the individual becomes more psychologically involved with the innovation and actively seeks information about it. The individual pursues the attributes of an innovation, as I told you, in the previous class, pursued attributes, relative advantage, compatibility. So all those attributes, the individual pursue at this stage. Relative advantage, he perceive the what are the relative advantage, he perceive the compatibility, he perceive the complexity, he perceive the observability. So like this, the individual pursues the attributes of innovation, which is conditioned by one's own personality. So it all, the perception depends upon its socio-economic conditions as well as social norms. Social norms. Sometimes some of the, as I told you, some of the social norms. So adoption of donkey, improved varieties of donkey, adoption of piggery. So there, some of the socio-economic factors come in the way of adoption. The individual perceives the attributes of innovation, which is conditioned by one's personality. That means his education, uh, his social status, everything. Education, income, personality, and social system norms. Social norms, as I told you, socio-cultural barriers, and develops a general idea about innovation. That is knowledge stage, persuasion stage, then decision making stage. At this stage, the individual decides to go for trial of the innovation. Decision occurs when an individual engages in the activities that lead to adoption or rejection of innovation. At this stage, the individual makes the decision whether to adopt or reject the innovation. After knowing the innovation, after pursuing the innovation, the individual makes decision whether to adopt or reject the innovation at this stage. That's why it is called as decision making stage. The individual puts the innovation to a small scale trial. The individual puts the innovation, new idea, to a small scale trial in own situation. That means an individual decides to go for trial of an innovation in his own situation. Then considering its relative advantage, various attributes of an innovations, risk involved, and many other related factors like availability of market, need for family requirement, etc. The individual decides whether to adopt or reject the innovation. That is called as decision making. At this stage, the individual decides to adopt the innovation on trial basis, small scale adoption. So deciding, after conducting trial, deciding to adopt, after conducting trial, if he is satisfied with the innovation, then he go for implementation stage. So implementation stage occurs when the individual puts an innovation to use. Implementation stage indicates large scale adoption. After conducting trial, the individual go for large scale, that is implementation stage. It occurs when the individual puts the innovation into use. Individual put into use, that is called as adoption. So implementation may involve. So at this stage, after trial, based on the experiences in the decision making stage, the individual makes some may modification in the management of the innovation. Implementation stage may involve changes in the management of innovation or modification in the innovations. So he may go for wider spacing or he may go for narrow spacing. So depending upon the soil conditions, he may adjust. He may go for early sowing, or he may go for late sowing, or he may use more seed rate. So implementation may involve changes in the management of innovation and or modification in the innovation to suit more closely to the specific needs of the particular person who adopt it. That is called as, so modification is nothing but reinvention. So that is reinvention occurs at implementation stage. Modification, reinvention is nothing but modification in the management of the innovation to suit to the each situation. So reinvention is defined as the degree to which an innovation is changed or modified by the user in the process of its adoption. To what extent is modified, how many practices. So whether seed rate is modified, spacing is modified, fertilizer application is modified. So how many practices is changed. So reinvention is defined as the degree to which, to what extent an innovation is changed or modified by the users in the process of its adoption and implementation. So reinvention is often beneficial to the adopters of an innovation. Reinvention is beneficial. So sometimes without the modification, we adopt the innovation. Sometimes if the soil is too fertile, if we go for recommended spacing, there may be a if the plants grow vigorously in the fertile soils, there may be a shortage of competition because of less space. Then last one is confirmation after implementation. After large scale adoption, the individual reinforce the ideas whether to continue or discontinue. That is, individual confirms whether to continue the innovation or discontinue. That is confirmation stage. It occurs when an individual seeks reinforcement of innovation. Individual go for reinforcement of whether to continue or not. Reinforcement of new ideas. He has already made. Once again, he is going to confirm. He may reverse his previous decision if exposed to conflicting message about the new ideas. So after implementation, at the confirmation stage, if we came to know about conflicting information, negative information about the innovation, he may discontinue. Suppose some particular variety is giving more yield compared to existing one, so he decides to adopt the innovation. So when he goes to the market, if he did not get better price for the produce, he may discontinue. So whenever he came to know during the adoption process, if he came to know about conflicting ideas, negative ideas about the new innovation, he may discontinue. That is confirmation stage, whether to continue the adoption or adoption of innovation or rejection of innovation. So this is about confirmation stage. So this is the diagrammatic presentation of innovation decision paradigm of stages in the innovation decision process. So these are the stages: knowledge stage, persuasion stage, decision making stage, implementation stage, then confirmation stage. So these are the five stages. So while knowing about an innovation, knowing when the individual goes for uh, to searching of new ideas, so it all depends upon the prior conditions of the farmer. So what are his previous practices? Hmm? Whether the previous, if the previous practice is better than is giving good yield, then you will not search for the, you will not try to know for new ideas. So knowing about an innovation depends upon the previous practices. If he is not satisfied with the previous practice, existing practice, he go for searching the new idea, new practice. That is called as prior condition. Felt needs or problems. If he is facing problem with the exist, though it may be giving more yield, but he may be facing some problems, labor problem, transportation problem, market problem, then you go for new ideas. For example, if he is facing the marketing problem of sugarcane, harvesting of sugar, though the sugarcane is giving more yield, but transportation is problem, harvesting problem, then you go for new ideas. It may be new crop. So innovativeness, it also knowing about innovation knowledge, it also depends upon innovativeness up to how early, innovativeness, progressiveness of the farmers. Innovative. Some of the farmers are not innovative. Some are more innovative. The innovative people, innovativeness, knowing about an innovation and about an innovation depends upon the innovativeness degree to which an individual is earlier in adopting the new ideas. Norms of social system. Norms, to what extent the norms of the social norms of the farmers is flexible to adopt an innovation. So these are the prior conditions about knowing about an innovation. So after knowing about an innovation, so these are the characteristics of decision making unit. Socioeconomic characteristics. So decision making, knowing about an, after knowing about an innovation, so these characters influence the farmers hmm, to adopt the innovation. Socioeconomic characteristics, personality variables like age, education, landholding, annual income, situational variables like institutions. So to know about the innovation, there must be some institution, Department of Agriculture, credit institutions. To adopt innovation, some credit support is required. Input to get seeds or necessary other inputs, input agencies. Then communication behavior of the farmers. To what extent the farmers is communicative. Knowing about an innovation requires communication. To what extent is communicating with other or change agency or neighboring farmers or progressive farmers. These are the characteristics of decision making unit, yeah, of the farmers while knowing about an innovation. Then persuasion. After knowing about innovation, the individual pursue these characters. These things I have already, how the individual pursue the innovations. So how you pursue the relative advantage, how you pursue the compatibility, how you pursue the complexity, how you pursue the reliability, observability. So at this stage, the individual pursue the, after pursuing, you go for decision, that is adoption or rejection of innovation. So the individual decides whether to adopt the innovation or reject the innovation. So if he decides to adopt the innovation, he go for small scale. So after small scale, then you go for implementation. So the individual may continue confirmation. The individual may, after adoption, the individual may continue the adoption or he may discontinue the adoption at the trial stage itself. After conducting the trial stage, he may continue the adoption. Even sometimes he may decision at the trial stage itself, decision making stage itself to discontinue the innovation. Sometimes the individual reject the innovation, then you go for continued rejection. Rejection of innovation, continued rejection of innovation. Sometimes he reject the innovation in the initial stage, then later adoption. He may adopt innovation later. So adoption, he may continue the adoption, or after adoption, after adopting the innovation for 1 or 2 years, he may discontinue the innovation after exposing to some of the conflict. So in the beginning, sometimes he may reject the innovation, continued rejection. He may in the beginning he may reject the innovation. Later on, he may adopt the innovation. So this is about adoption of innovation. So in the next class, we shall see the remaining aspect.